Welcome back to Achieving Unlimited Health. In our last episode, Dr. Cima showed us why inches, not pounds, tell the real story of transformation. So today we're taking another step into the chemical side of health by exploring body toxicity and why it really matters to detox the right way. Today we'll be Dr. Cima's personal experiences, patient stories, and science behind how our bodies cleanse, rebuild, and renew as we go. So let's dive in. Hi, Dr. Cima.
How are you?
Good, good. Happy
Good.
to be chatting with you again today.
So, same here.
Mhm. Absolutely. So let's dive in. And I'm curious to know what first opened your eyes to the idea that toxins could silently sabotage your health.
Well, it was a long time ago because I realized that, a lot of times, let's say during the flu season, a lot of people they would say it was the flu, like a virus, but it wasn't a virus. It was more like a toxic reaction to the environment. And if you really look at it, and this is like kind of blew me away, but this is pretty much what happens. So flu season usually starts around January, February. But if we go back 3 months prior, you go back and you go to Halloween, where you go out and buy a ton of candy. And if you have kids, they're going to get a ton of candy. And everybody in the household is going to get a ton of candy. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, we have Thanksgiving, which is a really heavily traveled holiday. And, it's a 4 or 5 day ordeal. And you're eating and drinking things that you normally don't eat and drink for a number of days in a row. And you go, halfway around the world to see family that you don't want to see or, you love to see. So then that makes it a little bit worse because now you keep on eating and drinking. Now the month of December is filled with parties, it's filled with shopping, it's filled with decorating, it's filled with eating and drinking a lot of the foods that you don't eat and drink throughout the year. And then by the time Christmas or Hanukkah is over, now you have the New Year. And of course, you're going to celebrate the new year by drinking and eating and doing all the things that you normally shouldn't be doing. And then come the second, now you want to start saying, okay, I'm going to have some New Year's resolutions in here. And the reality is that at this particular point, your body's so toxic from all the stuff that you've been eating and haven't been eating that it gets to a point where you start feeling sick and you start blaming it on the flu. So it's not a flu type situation. It's not a viral type situation. It's more of a toxic situation based on the last 3 months of eating and drinking foods that you don't eat and drink. On top of that, all the mental emotional duress that comes with that, and also the amount of financial duress that comes with it. People around the third or fourth week of January say, I can't take it anymore. So my body starts to detox. Problem is, Layla, that they go to the doctor and he thinks it's a viral infection. So he's going to give you an antibiotic or he's going to give you something that's going to even make you even more toxic. So a lot of times patients will get to the point where they'll be running like, let's say flu type symptoms well into March or April. And they're probably usually on their second or third, you know, pack of some kind of antibiotic that's really not working. It's just making them more toxic. So that's so that I saw that right, when I started practicing. So it was made me realize that, that's always causing a lot of the problems. And if you kind of like focus on that as opposed to, let's say, thinking that you're sick and you have a viral infection, this would be the best way to handle it.
Wow, that's something I would have never thought about.
No,
How
most people don't until I start telling them about it, and then they start laughing. They go, you're right. You eat a lot of stuff you don't eat during the year, and then you just, pack on the foods and pack on the alcohol and everything else that you basically shouldn't be doing. And you shouldn't be doing it, but it's the holidays. You're not gonna like not eat or not drink or not have any kind of desserts. Of course you're gonna have that. But the key factor then becomes um now when you're gonna take care of yourself, when you're gonna cleanse the body, you have to do it properly. So that was one of the biggest things that I saw where a lot of times doctors were treating patients unknowingly because a toxic reaction is very similar to an infection. There are some major differences, but a lot of times people go, "Oh, I'm sick. I got the flu. Don't come near me." And it's not that they have the flu, they're toxic. So, and plus all the stuff that they do during the year that they shouldn't be doing will bring that out as well. So, so the toxic reactions are really key, and that's what creates a lot of, as you're going to see, the second cause of obesity. The first cause is not eating the right diet, but the second cause of obesity is actually done through like having these toxic reactions that create the obesity as well. So it's not just the fact that you're going to get a toxic reaction from these foods, but you're going to gain a lot of weight. And the reason for it is because toxins, your body works on it works on charges, positive and negative charges. So when food or toxins or poisons enter the body tags it right away and says, okay, you're going here because you're food, you're going there because we're going to detoxify or cleanse you and get you out of the body, and that's the way the body works. The problem is that toxins don't have a charge. They don't have a positive and negative charge. So the body doesn't know what to do with them when it comes in. So what it tends to do, and people don't even realize this, it wraps it in fat, so it can kind of protect the body from the toxin, especially if it's a neurotoxin, and it stores it in the body. So the more toxic you become, the fatter you become by just holding on to this fat. So I have patients come in, they go, I'm like 30, 40 pounds overweight and I can't, no matter what I do, I can't lose the weight. And a lot of times it's because it's a really bad toxic reaction going on. And if so, when you do a detox or a good cleanse, that should flush out a lot of those, let's say, poisons that are wrapped in the fat that the body can now get rid of at that point. So it's like a double-edged sword. It causes, all kinds of sickness and disease such as cancer, but also at the same time, it leads to a, unhealthy type body weight that we talked about last time. Your body composition gets crazy, and then you get to a point where I can't lose weight, I don't know what's going on, and then at that point you're like frustrated and you don't know what to do. So
Absolutely. And listening to you talk about this, my assumption would be that toxins are something that happens to your body over time. But you've even said previously that newborns are born with hundreds of toxic chemicals. So, how did you
yeah.
learn that? And what does that mean for the rest of us?
Well, what had happened was, because I'll talk to people all the time and I'll say, "Are you toxic? Or you have any kind of toxic reactions?" And they'll go, "No." It's like I'm doing fine. That I don't usually get sick, but they are toxic, and sooner or later it's going to catch up with them. Now, when I was in school, which was a long time ago now, they didn't believe that when the fetus was in the mom's body, that any kind of circulation was protected by the placenta, so it wouldn't let toxins across that blood barrier, so it would never get to the infant or the fetus at that particular point. But then they found out that that's not true. So they would take newborn feed or newborn babies at this point, and they would check them for all different kinds of chemicals. And so they were really in for a surprise because and these statistics are a number of years old. They're like, let's say, um, pre-COVID, and they're probably worse now. But, before we're born, we have 180 chemicals in our body that can cause cancer. 180, not one.
Mhm.
And then we have also about 217 that would basically cause uh, cancer in the body. We can also have another 208 chemicals that cause genetic defects in the body. So right from day one, when you're coming out, you have all kinds of toxic reactions going on. So it's surprising. You'll see like, you know, babies with, cancer or all kinds of weird different things that are going on with them. And it's because of the fact that they're toxic and they have all these chemicals and their body can't function well, you know, with all that stuff going on. Not to mention they make it even more toxic because now you're going to get hit with vaccines. I think at this particular point, there's about 78 vaccines that you have to get by the time you're like, I think 17 or 18. I
Wow.
think when I was a kid, I think he had 2 or 3, but now it's like about 78. So you have all these other chemicals that they're shooting into your body, plus all the stuff, the fillers and all the other stuff that's in there. There's more toxin poisons as well. So, you just stuck in a toxic environment. But with that being said, your body has the capability of taking care of all that stuff as long as you know what to do to help clean it up and keep it as healthy as possible and as, let's say, less toxic as possible. But there's no way of getting around the fact that we live in a toxic environment, and you'll see in a few seconds why. The average American consumes about 14 pounds of additives, 120 pounds of sugar, and pounds of salt. So even these, start to really have an impact on us. Also, in our water supply, because if you look at everything, you look at our water supply, say, well, that's pretty good. But you have in our water supply, you have traces of Prozac, Zoloft, estrogen, a number of other pharmaceuticals that the water plants can't, or the sewage plants can't get rid of. So you're stuck drinking them unless you use things like reverse osmosis. And the same thing with air pollution. I mean, back in the 80s, air pollution was pretty intense. I remember flying into New York from a seminar, and it was on a Saturday, probably about 12, 1 o'clock. And it was a beautiful day. It was a crystal clear blue sky, no clouds, no nothing. So we're about 75 miles from New York. And the pilot says, you know, get ready. We're going to be only 70 miles away and, we'll be doing this, we'll be doing that. He goes, now, for those of you who can look at, I don't know, it's the star, but I forget what it was. Look at the left side of the plane, you'll see New York City. And he says, you look at that big brown cloud out there. And sure enough, there was a big brown cloud, and that was New York City. That was all well, that was all the air pollution that made it look like a big brown cloud. Now, once you land at the airport, you don't notice that, but you have all that all those pollutants around. So, and then now, not to mention our food, which thank God RFK Jr. is kind of doing a really great job with. He's trying to eliminate a lot of toxins and poisons in our food that that have been in there for a long time that shouldn't be there because they do cause cancer, they do cause all kinds of other health issues, and we don't need that. And if you also look at a lot of the women, a lot of the cosmetics that they use are also toxic. And I didn't know this, but in lipstick alone, there's about 54 different carcinogens. So if you just, putting, just makeup on your face, you're causing all kinds of issues that way too as well. And then we didn't even get to the last part is too, is that, our environment, we have 100 trillion cells in our body. And every day those cells to live have to produce byproducts that eventually cause all kinds of problems with us, such as histamines, leukotrienes, bradykinins, prostaglandins. These cause, all kinds of chemical reactions in the body. Plus, we have what we call the good bacteria that kind of help us, but they also release a lot of toxins themselves. They get a lot of waste products that they have to get rid of. So, carbon dioxide, methane, hydrogen, additional dead bacteria. This is what our body has to do to really try to stay well. So, besides the 100 trillion cells, producing all kinds of chemicals. We have symbiotic bacteria. These are bacteria that we need that help us, but they also produce a lot of toxins and a lot of poisons as well. So we have a lot of issues as far as that goes. So that's what I see most of the time with most people. And, the thing is, people say, oh, go on a cleanse, do this, do that. They don't realize like that it depends on what part of the immune system or the cleansing or detoxification system in the body that's not functioning. Many times patients will come in and it really depends on what part of the immune system or the detoxification system is their problem. And if we look at the body, this is like really interesting. Because we have all this stuff with the detoxification and trying to cleanse the body, the whole body is a detoxification system. People don't realize your skin is the largest organ in your body for detoxification. You got your lungs, you have your kidneys, you have your liver, you have your spleen, you have your thyroid, you have your thymus. You also have your lymphatic system to help flush things out. You also produce a lot of what they call antibodies and to fight different kinds of diseases. So your body is basically there just to clean everything as well. So the whole body is an immune toxic fighting system. And so depending on where you're having the problems, that's where you're having the problems with the toxin. So let's say you have, this is really interesting because a lot of teenagers, they'll have a lot of problems with their skin. Well, there you go. They can't get the toxins out of their skin for whatever reason. So that's where you have to start the detoxification process. If it's the liver, by running a blood test, you can see like your liver enzymes to see how high they are. And if they're very high, then you're going to start noticing that um, you should basically realize that we have to cleanse the liver as opposed to, let's say, the skin. So really, you have to really look at it in a logical way to see, okay, what part of my immune system or my detoxification system isn't functioning properly. And at that particular point, then we can at least start to determine what it is or what we should or shouldn't do. And that also, it's again, that also works with your diet. By eating the wrong foods, you're not going to be able to digest them properly, and you're going to have a lot of excessive, let's say, things, even if it's food, but if it's, like I said, just not broken down properly, it becomes a poison. So you have to deal with that too. So a lot of digestive problems, you don't allow your body to cleanse itself as well. So it also causes even additional toxins in the body. But as long as your body's functioning properly, you should be okay. And as long as you try to keep your body as in good a shape as possible, then you'll basically, never, you won't get sick. So when the flu season comes, you don't get sick. And not saying that you're not saying you'll never get sick, but you probably won't get sick. And if you do get sick, you'll be the first one to recover and get out of there too. So, so we have a number of ways that we create toxins in the body, and there's no way around that. And there's a number of different detoxification processes that you use. Like years ago, I shouldn't say years, decades ago, there was uh, a, a diet and a cleansing program where you basically would do coffee enemas to help flush out the liver. I don't know if you ever heard that. That was in
Oh.
Merck. So it was like a really good way to help detoxify the body is through um, giving yourself a coffee enema. Now I think coffee tastes better the other way, so I'll try that way. But that's what you can do. There are many things you can do. There are a lot of things that help detoxify the body. So as long as you can start realizing, and again, you have to see where the problem is. A lot of times it could be like we talked about, your liver, it could be the spleen, it could be in the blood cell production, it could be white blood cell production. And then it's white blood cell production, then you got to figure out exactly what organs or glands are affecting the white blood cell production, and then help start focusing on that as well. So it's it's something that's really important, but most people they don't have the detail, or they don't have the knowledge to kinda, like, do something, so they'll just pick anything, and if it's easy to do, they'll do it, and if it's not, they won't. So,
You have described the current era as the new childhood in America. Can you please explain what it means and why do you see toxicity as a root cause of that trend?
well, it's if you really look at, like I said, if you're looking at all the different kinds of things that toxins do, they affect the brain, they affect your genetic makeup, and then throwing on top of that all these different shots that the kids get today. If you really look at, you want to look at autism or the whole
Mhm.
spectrum, is there was no such thing as autism when I was growing up as a kid. I started to hear about autism back in the late 70s, early 80s, and it was like no big thing. It was maybe one out of 3 or 4,000 children that were being born had some kind of autism, but they were on the spectrum. And it got worse over the years and over the decades. So now it's, I think, again, don't quote me on this because they change all the time, but I'd say it's one in every 20 or 25 kids being born today have autistic or they're on the spectrum some way, somehow. And by giving them the additional shots, it's just causing more and more trauma to their immune system. Or when I say immune, I also mean detoxification as well. So that's the problem with the children today. And then on top of that, you throw the foods in that they basically, you know, eat, and a lot of the stuff is fast foods. As when I was a child, you ate basically your mother cooked. We very rarely went out for food. I mean, yeah, I could get some change and I can buy some candy and stuff like that, but overall, I was eating pretty much nutritious foods pretty constantly, and like I said, we never went out, and back then, the foods weren't as adulterated as they are today. So,
Mhm.
That's why when you look at things, you start to see children and they have this whole autistic spectrum, which never existed before. And
Mhm.
and they'll swear up and down, well, we don't know what's causing it. It's like, it's logic. You don't need to like sit down and run 10,000 experiments. You look at over the years, you look at how many shots they've been getting, and you look at the number of shots that's going higher and higher, and the number of people with autism or children with autism or having some kind of issue with the spectrum is also going higher. So if it's not that, tell me what it is. And
Mhm.
and it is that because we never faced this before. And a lot of the vaccines today, Layla, they're when they started with this COVID nonsense, vaccines were always just really well, let's put it this way. It took sometimes decades for a vaccine to be formulated for a basic, situation polio or whatever it was. And with this whole thing with the COVID, they just rushed this thing through like in months. And you can't do the research, you can't do all that stuff and make sure that you have a safe and effective method within 2 months. It takes years and decades of intense testing and stuff like that to assess, how good that's going to be. And they're not even using the attenuated virus anymore. They're using bits and pieces of genetic material, and sometimes the genetic material isn't even genetic material, it's engineered genetic material. So, their whole goal with this was, well, there's a lot of reasons why they created that kind of, advanced COVID virus, and, but it's created a big toll on people overall, and, when eventually, when it all comes out, the people are gonna realize that a lot of people who died during that COVID time died because of the shots, or they just, created all kinds of chemical imbalances in their body. So, and if you were fortunate enough not to get the shots, or you were fortunate enough not to have any kind of bad reactions, God bless you. But it's not that way for most people. And it's something I see all the time. I see it with many of my patients. They'll come in and they'll tell me these horror stories about friends or family or what have you, and they relate it to either getting the shot or the COVID or whatever it is. But even with the COVID, it's pretty much it's a biochemical reaction, and it leads to, toxic effects on the body. And the more you start
Right.
giving on vaccinations and, you know, boosters and all the rest of that stuff, you just create more and more havoc with the body, as opposed to trying to build the immune system up naturally. So,
And speaking about toxins and detoxing the body, when did you personally realize that detoxification had to become part of every health plan that you created?
well, yeah, it was almost right away. It was, going back and then looking at it, I'd say as early as probably 1979, 1980, I started to realize like the effects of toxins on the body, especially when I started to put the fact that, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, sick after that, or New Year's, and then you were sick. I started to realize like, it's not an infectious type situation. And so what they wind up doing when they create a scenario where it's an infection and you have a virus, so now you start freaking out because now you don't want to see people, you don't want to come near people because the fact that you're sick and you have this virus and that's it. And it's for all these years and decades, I tend to like hug all my patients. Doesn't matter. And so when I go to hug them, they go, "Doc, I'm sick. You can't hug me." It's like, you're not sick. Okay, you have a toxic reaction, but you're not sick. Really? Yeah, really, you're not sick. So, it was at least trying to get them over that. Or they'd say, or they go and get the shot, okay, for whatever it was, for this year's flu, and they still get the flu. And it doesn't work because, virus, their life cycle is a lot quicker than ours. So within a year, they can go through numerous life cycles and change their genetic material. So even though you use the attenuated virus from the year before, it's for that virus from the year before. This is a whole new strain right now. So it's kind of like, it's like it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. And the more I start to realize, like they kept on pushing uh, a lot of these. no antibiotics on patients, start to make me realize that not everybody gets sick from a viral infection, and it was mostly lot of toxic reactions at the same time. So,
Absolutely. And it's interesting to hear that from a different perspective too, because you think you're sick, you don't think about it being related to toxins at all whatsoever. You just think you have a stomach bug or something like
yeah.
that, or the flu. Speaking of the toxins and detoxing your body the right way, like you were talking about, can you explain a little bit about how the body protects itself by wrapping toxins in fat, and how does that work? And why does it make weight loss so challenging?
Yeah, 'cause that's in fact, in today's society, Layla, that's a big problem with the weight. It's because of the toxicity in the body. And like I said before, when you have, the body works on it, it's like electromagnetic forces. So we have to have either a positive or a negative charge to anything that enters the body. And regardless of what that charge is, the body will take it that identifies where the body now has to put this particular chemical. So if it's a toxin, it's going to wrap it in fat because it's got to protect it from the body, and it can't do that because there's no charge to it. So when you have no charge, that means that the body says, is this a food? I don't know. Is this a toxin? I don't know. But until we find out, we're going to protect the body from it by wrapping it in fat. So the more toxic you become over time, eventually that's what will happen to you. You'll start to, you know, put more and more toxins in fat, wrapping in fat, wrapping in fat, wrapping in fat. And slowly but surely you'll just get heavier and heavier. And then depending on where where you have the most toxic buildup, that's where you're gonna have the most, let's say the most fat, visible fat on your body. So it'll kind of help you decide or determine like what kind of problems you'll have. And it does affect your body structure too as well. It'll make people look a lot different, their structure in their body, based on the fact that they are toxic, that they're having problems with either their thyroid or their liver or whatever it is. So what you want to do is you want to just make sure that, when you're going to go into a cleanse program or some type of detoxification, that you do the right one. That's number one. But then number two, you have to really, watch your diet and, do things that'll basically help improve your overall health, whether it's exercise. One of the best things, like for example, I learned this a long time ago. They were talking about exercise, and exercise really flushes out your lymphatic system, which the body uses as a sanitation system in the body. And so people do, oh, I'll do some lymphatic massage to flush out the toxins, or I'll just do some massage work. And it's like, that'll help. But if you want to really push out a lot of toxins and you want to push out a lot of stuff from your lymphatics, um, intense exercise will increase your lymphatic drainage by 17 times normal. So just by doing pretty intense exercise, you flush out all the lymphatics. And you also breaking the sweat, so you're pushing stuff out through your skin. And so you're getting a really good, and then plus, you're flushing out a lot of stuff out of your lung because you're breathing a little bit heavier. So you're opening up all the lung spaces, and then you're getting that, under control as well. So it's a combination of like eating properly, exercising, and then when you start doing those things, you'll start to see a big difference as far as what's going on with the patients. So,
Absolutely. And what kinds of symptoms or conditions specifically have you seen improve when toxicity is finally addressed?
well, it's basically like I said, the symptoms always like really mimic, somebody that has an infection. So the best way to determine if it's an infection or a toxic reaction is through a blood chemistry analysis. So the blood test, the CBC differential, that's the part that I would be looking at. That tells me all about the different kinds of white blood cells and the red blood cells and a lot of things like that. And based on whichever blood cells are high or low, as far as the white blood cell counts go, that'll dictate if you have an infection or a toxic reaction. So it's a good way to like, because patients will come in. Now, if you have an infection, just to give you an example, your white blood cell count will be really high. So it usually goes between, let's say, 4 and 10. If you had an infection, it'd be at 12, 13, 14, even higher, or whatever. But if you have a toxic reaction that's causing the problem, your white blood cell count will be really low. It'll be like 2 or 3 or 4. So you know that's a toxic reaction as opposed to an infection. Because like I said, the symptoms sometimes are very, very close. And so it's hard to determine which one it is. And usually if you do have an infection, it's usually you'll have a rise in temperature with it. Whereas with a toxic reaction, it's not so much a rise in temperature, but you just don't feel right, and your temperature may be off, it may be even low. So for some patients as well. But as long as I look at all the different kinds of white blood cells, I can see if it's an infection, toxic reaction, we're having an inflammatory type situation. Because inflammation too, as well, is part of the immune system's reaction towards what's going on in the environment around them. So it's really good. That's the only way you can really tell. It's rather you can't go by the symptoms, you can't go by how you feel, and you can't go by how long it usually lasts, because it can last for a long time, and you can't be laying around saying, "Well, should I take antibiotics or should not?" So it gets to a point where you say to yourself, "Okay, let me figure out how I can cleanse the body and start to help improve the overall function of the body." So that's what we try to go for all the time.
Absolutely. And testing obviously really is something that helps to really identify where some of these issues come from. And I know you often say test, don't guess. So, how does blood chemistry testing reveal toxicity and guide the right detox program?
Exactly, because if you do that, then you know what's going on, and then you can see, like, if it's a problem with the spleen or it's a problem with the liver, you can, like, alter, the kinds of foods that you're eating and make sure you're doing things that'll keep the toxicity down, and at the same time, if you put them on the right supplementation, it's gonna really help. Like, for example, I mean, a lot of most patients or most people do take some kind of supplements today. It's not that they don't, they usually do, but they don't know what they're taking. It's like, I'll look at them and they'll say, "Well, I take vitamin C," and it's like, "Why?" And they'll come up with some kind of crazy story that they read on Facebook or somebody told them that that's what they should be doing, and so they start putting together a program of supplements based on old wives' tales, what they read about, but they're not sure exactly what's going on with their body when they take it. So they're buying these supplements, and a lot of stuff that they do buy is probably pretty much toxic itself. It's not even a good quality supplement. So, you want something that's like pharmaceutical, or we call it nutraceutical grade, so that this way at least you know what's in the supplements is what's in the supplement. So when we get our supplements, we buy them from professional health products where we know exactly what's in the product. It's governed, by a lot of factors that deal with the government, whether it's the FDA or whatever it is, that kind of say, yes, this is what's in those products. And so at least we know that the products themselves are good, and these products are used for that particular detoxification or helping to repair and rebuild that gland or organ. If it's the liver, a liver is the big one too. A lot of times when people have a lot of lung issues, then it's the lungs. I mean, you have to use different kinds of treatment techniques, different kinds of supplements to help that in itself. So it's kind of like, looking at things, but trying to do it from a logical perspective as opposed to, doing things where you don't know what you're doing. That's what it comes down to. And you're hoping that you're going to find the holy grail and that's it. But it's not that easy, because people think that, well, just take this or I'll take that. Or I think you see them on TV all the time. Take this, supplement, grows hair in a cue ball. It does this, it does that, it does this, and it doesn't do anything. So it's got to, I never saw like a product, and I've been doing this now for like 50 years. And I used to call it the supplement in the month club, where every month they'd come out with a new product. You just watch it on TV now. And this one will put you to sleep. This one will curb your appetite. This one will do this one. And it's not that way. I wish it were. It's not that easy, because they're just saying, "Oh, take this supplement and it's going to take care of all kinds of chemical problems that you have in your body, and that's not true. That's not gonna happen. So it's gotta be logical, it's gotta make sense, and then when you start taking it, you'll start seeing changes in how you feel, but more importantly, you see changes with the blood test too.
And for example, speaking about supplements and detoxing and things like that, I know many people hear the word detox and they think of fad cleanses or juice fasts or things like that. So, what do those approaches get wrong?
Well, the approach could be wrong, but based on the fact that that's not part of the immune system that's an issue. And which is most the case. Now, are juice fasts is good for you? Yeah. It's not that they're bad for you. And I think if, you didn't have anything else better than that, fasting with juices would be good. A total fast would be also good, like a water fast. But, you don't know exactly how much it's going to help you unless you do have a blood test to know exactly what's going on. But those fasts do help. And like I said, you can do like, again, the coffee enemas. You can do a lot of they had uh, y- liver gallbladder cleanses that really help. But again, if it's not the liver or the gallbladder that's causing the issue, then you're just cleaning out your liver and gallbladder, and you won't necessarily see the results that you want to see.
Absolutely. And then when it comes to toxicity and it being such a impact on your health, it doesn't just affect the body, but it also does affect your mood, your energy,
Oh
and
yeah.
your mental clarity. So how does that play a role? How does toxicity really do that?
Well, basically, what it really does, it just gunks up all the functions of the body, especially if you're dealing with the liver, and it'll basically get to a point where you'll have so much toxins in the body it just interferes with a lot of the biochemical reactions that are going on. Like for example, the liver has about 500 known functions. So if you get the liver very toxic, you can have all kinds of problems, and you don't even think about this a liver problem. And so you just kind of go on and live that way and think that, well, okay, I'm having a bad day or whatever it is, but you want to kind of figure out exactly what's going on with the body so you can get it to heal. And so it's like I said, the best way, because I've been doing this for such a long time, was through blood chemistry analysis. Because when I first got involved with nutrition, my question was, um, no, when you're just dealing with nutrition with yourself, that's one thing. But when you're dealing with nutrition with a whole bunch of different people that have all like a gamut of health problems, you can't put everybody on the same thing. You can't say everybody should be on this diet. You can't say everybody should be on this supplement. You can't say that everybody should be doing this. It's like based on an individual. So if you're looking at a person and you're starting to realize like, okay, there's a lot of health issues over here. What are causing the health issues? If it's like, let's say, a problem with detoxification, then that's what you're going to have to focus on. But you're going to have to pick the right group to do it with. And if you don't take care of it, Layla, what's going to happen is the more toxic your body becomes, it's not something that, you'll gain some weight and stuff, or that you'll be having some other issues, but that's what leads to cancer. And if we look at cancer today, um, well, they say heart disease is number one, but cancer is running a close second. And every year it's getting worse because, you see more and more people with cancer and even kids, children. And you say to yourself, how could kids have cancer? Just because the way I described it before, there's a ton of chemicals that are in their body when they're basically they're not even born yet. So you're gonna have all kinds of stuff occurring at that point. And so once they're born, it's not gonna get any better, it's gonna get worse. So you start to have these kids that have cancer, and instead of trying to figure out what's causing the cancer, they just start hitting them with all kinds of cancer drugs. And it's just again, to me, that's not the way to handle this situation. It's kind of like it's a very detrimental way of looking at it, because when you talk about the cure being worse than the disease in most cases, then medicine's doing something wrong, because you shouldn't be hurting people. At best, not that you can help everybody, but at best, you're not hurting them. You're not making things worse. And by doing what they're doing, as opposed to like we talked about now with cancer, It'd be like, "Oh, let's start giving them chemo and radiation." That's the worst thing to give a child, the worst thing, but that's their way of looking at that's the cause and everything else like that that's going along with it. So, I just
Mhm.
cancer cures are pretty intense out there. They're pretty bad. They really are. They have a really bad impact on most people that take them. And I know when people are going in for chemo and, oh, radiation too as well, it's not a fun process. It's a
Oh,
heck of more
absolutely.
fun when you're eating and drinking and enjoying your food and taking care of your body the way it should be. Yeah, and that's really one of the goals of, me doing these podcasts. It's like, a lot of people out there just don't know, and
Mhm.
I wouldn't know either had it been for, like, just following this for all these decades. You don't know because you listen to what the experts say, and, they're not really experts. They think they are, but they're not really experts, and so they kinda, like, wanna shove everybody down that same tube and say everybody's the same, and they're not. Everybody's individual, and you have to treat them that way, and as long as you can put together the right program, then you're gonna start seeing a lot more improvement with patients, and that's the goal of what I wanna do is, like, make people aware that their body has the capability of well, here's a perfect example, and I think we might have mentioned this before. If you take a
Mhm.
plant, okay, if I give you an exotic plant and say to yourself, "Layla, here, take care of this plant. Here's the direction. It needs this amount of water, this amount of sunlight, this temperature. The soil has to be a pH of this, and you have to go along with all these different things." If you did that, the plant's going to flourish. Now, if you take the plant and don't give it the proper sunlight, the proper temperature, and everything else like that, the plant's going to start dying. It's gonna start wilting. You're gonna see flowers falling off the, branches, and you're gonna see, roots being destroyed and everything else like that. Now, you're not gonna take that plant and give it antibiotics. It'd be stupid to do that. Or say, "Oh, look at this branch over here. It looks like it's got cancer, so we'll cut it off and we'll cure the plant." That's not gonna help. What's gonna help if you take that plant and give it everything it needs again, then it'll flourish. And that's what people need to know. It's like your body has the capability of healing itself. Give it what it needs and it'll heal itself. If God will do it for a plant, he's going to do it for a human being. That's for sure. And people just they don't believe that. Doctors don't believe it at all. They think that your body is just basically a waste. It can't do anything, can't heal itself, can't do anything. They need to heal it with drugs and surgery. So, and that's not go all the time either. So it's at a point right now where people are starting to realize, like, if I start taking really good care of myself, then I'm going to start seeing, some really good changes, and I'm not going to just live until I'm 50 or 60. I'll live a lot longer, and I'll have a lot more healthy life. And that would be, that would be my goal to see people do that. And that's a lot of times when I'm working with patients, they can't believe the difference in how they feel based on what they felt before. And, like, for example, right now, I'd say most people the biggest problems I see with most people right now with nutrition is they're not taking in nowhere near enough protein. And
Mhm.
and the protein regenerates the body. Lack of protein degenerates the body. So if you have lack of protein, degenerated diseases such as heart and cancer overrun the body. So if we kind of put that into a perspective and start, showing people how to fuel and eat and everything else like that, they'll have a nice, strong immune system and they'll be healthy in the process. So,
Absolutely. And you always talk about how nutrition is obviously so important. And you've described toxicity as the bridge between poor nutrition and hormonal imbalance.
great.
So, why is it so important to address before fixing hormones?
Well, if you don't do that, you're not going to get you won't get the hormones the way you want to get them. Like, for
Mhm.
example, if you have let's say a problem with the liver, you go into effect not just the liver some of the liver hormone enzymes, but you're going to affect enzymes that impact your hormones as well. So, and then just putting all that additional fat kind of prevents the hormones from working properly anyway. So, but that would be like, in other words, once you start to develop, once you have a bad diet and it starts to develop more into a toxic type situation, eventually it becomes more of a endocrine or hormonal imbalance. And you see that with just tons of people today. Everybody's like
Yeah.
really concerned about hormonal imbalances. And a lot of it has to do with their diet. And if they, again, if you don't eat properly, you're not gonna be able to produce the hormones that you want to produce. And then certain hormones based on your diet are gonna really shoot up. Like for example, like you might take your insulin levels and might either boost them up super high where you become insulin resistant, or you develop a situation where it's like a diabetic where you don't produce enough insulin. And that's a lot to do with your diet. And the same thing with, let's say, your male or female reproductive hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. If you don't eat the right foods and don't exercise properly, those hormones are going to start dropping down. So you'll start to, go through some kind of menopause, like in your mid 40s or early 40s. But and that's okay. It's not as bad. But if you have all these other symptoms that go along with it, like where you're having night sweats, you can't sleep, you feel like crap, your energy levels are low, you start to, develop situations where, you just don't feel like yourself anymore. You can't think straight and all the rest. Then that becomes more hormonal and you start to, go down, another path that you can either do with hormone replacement therapy or bioidentical hormones, but it's not the same as if you can just maintain your normal hormonal output. I'll give you an
Absolutely.
example. When I first got into bodybuilding, they were telling me, well, you got to use testosterone, you got to use this to get bigger and stronger. And I said, you can do it without that. It's going to take a while, but you can do it. And I didn't really want to do testosterone myself, especially back then when I was in my 40s, even my 30s. It was just like, I don't want to do this because I didn't know what it was going to do to my overall health. And having like that kind of situation where it impacts your overall health, that's going to be something that you're going to have to deal with. Not necessarily then, because I follow a lot of bodybuilders today, the guys that I knew back in the 80s. And I can't believe how many die. They either die of heart disease, and we're not talking like they're in their 70s or 80s. They're talking in their 40s, 50s, 60s, some of them in their 30s. And it's a lot to do with, taking those additional hormones or creating, and then they create a lot of other hormonal imbalances. Now, they're doing it with steroids, but people are doing that with hormone replacement therapy or not even know what they should and shouldn't be doing. So it can get really dangerous really fast. And so it's always good to try to maintain hormonal levels naturally as opposed to um, having to go out there and like use hormone replacement therapy or bioidentical hormones. And you don't know how your body's going to react to it. That's the only thing I can tell you. You just never know. And, and there's you know, have it where you can get the pellets, where you take shots, where you can take creams, and each person's unique and different. And I'm not saying it's not good or it's not bad. It's not the greatest thing to do for you because sometimes with the women, if they take the hormone replacement therapy, because we do it here too, I don't, but Dr. Brown and Dr. Aaron, they do hormone replacement therapy and bioidentical hormones, and they deal with a lot of women. And they obviously getting some decent results with them because, they're still practicing and the patients are still coming in. So it's like, it's your choice. But I always think if you can maintain your body's ability to like, create the hormones themselves and just work with the ovaries and the adrenals and all the other organs that are involved with that, you're going to be much better off. It's like at this particular point now, my testosterone levels are kinda on the low side, but they're still within range. So my choice would be, well, do I wanna take testosterone and, kinda like, mm, boost up my testosterone levels, but for what reason? Unless I was feeling like, "Okay, I wanna go and compete," and stuff like that, which I'm not doing, then I would maybe think about it, but you don't know the problem with any kind of medication or even with hormones, when you start taking it, you don't know, like, if you feel that way because of the hormone, or you're feeling this way because the effects of the hormone on the body aren't the greatest. So you start to play devil's advocate with yourself and you're not sure what it is that you're doing. And then that's the big so you just keep on dealing with that and that's not good. And when you do take hormones like that, you literally decrease the let's say the ability of your with the male, his testicles to produce more testosterone. So it's kind of like when the body sees that the hormonal levels are there, it'll stop producing that particular
Right.
hormone, which is if you're having a difficulty time producing it to begin with, it's just going to make everything worse. So
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think that hormonal imbalances are a lot more common now than they used to be too. Just in
yeah,
my experience from having some hormonal issues to friends of mine having hormonal imbalances and PCOS and all of these changes. And it's interesting how it is so much, I think, more common now than it
very
used to be as well.
no,
So
it's you
definitely.
definitely and especially with the way they're treating it too. It's just it's difficult. It's very difficult to assess like how good you're doing with that because you might be feeling better, but what
Mhm.
it's going to do to you in the long run, nobody knows. Knows.
Yeah. And how to go about fixing it or improving is also, like we were talking about, very complicated as well
Yeah,
when you're
it's
getting
not
different
simple.
information.
It's
Mhm.
not simple because when I started doing blood chemistry analysis, I mean, we're doing it now close to 50 years, and the reality is that when you start doing it, you start to realize the complexities of the human body biochemically. You really have to sit down and say, "Well, wait a second, we gotta take this thing out." Whereas most doctors are not interested in figuring it out. They're just interested, "Let me give you a pill, let me give you a drug, let me give you a hormone that's gonna fix this, and you don't have to worry about it." And that doesn't work.
Mhm.
That'll never work.
Absolutely.
So,
And for someone who's listening right now who feels off, doesn't feel completely right, they're feeling something is off with them, but doesn't really know where to start. What's one simple way that they can really begin reducing toxicity in their daily life?
one thing is just stay away from junk. Just, don't eat a lot of junk. It's like you were talking about before is, last week was my birthday. And of course, patients are coming in with coffee cakes, carrot cakes, and all and you know what? I don't even like eating that stuff anymore. It's not that I don't, but it's like I just don't have to do it. And so it's something that I would say if you can just start to eliminate things from your diet that are bad and just start focusing on good things, that would probably be and also too, we didn't even mention this, and this was very important, drinking a lot of water.
Mhm. Yeah.
Most people don't even drink. I mean, they'll drink everything else but water, but they won't drink water.
Mhm. And
And
I think that, like, just from my experience on 2 of those things that you said, kind of like tricking yourself into finding ways that work for you. Like, I am so guilty of not drinking enough water. So I bought a specific cup that keeps my drinks
yeah,
cold. And since I did that, complete game changer in terms of how much water I've been drinking, also correlates with how much better I've been feeling.
yeah,
And then talking about cutting out junk and stuff, for example, I used to love soda. I mean, this I did years ago. I used to
yeah,
love soda, Pepsi, Coke,
yeah,
whatever. And I just stopped drinking it. I started drinking club soda. And now, if I go back to drinking any kind of like Pepsi or Sprite or any kind of soda, I just don't like it anymore. It's
yeah.
like
Blame me.
your body will get used to the things that you cut out originally. You'll feel a difference. And now, if I even sip like a Coke or anything, I'm like, I can feel the sugar, and
Yeah,
I don't want it at all.
that's good. Yeah, see, you'll get to that point. People will realize
Mhm.
that. If you just stop eating that, you'll get to a point where it's like, if I eat it, it's like okay, or if I don't, it's okay too. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
And then little bit, don't overdo it if you do decide to indulge with whatever it is.
exactly.
Yeah. 'Cause if someone brought me some carrot cake, I'd have a little.
Yeah, the carrot cake is a little bit more healthy, but
Yeah.
but it's still, it's like we just talked about. If you're just gonna use, just start to remove just crap from your diet. That's the key thing,
Mhm.
and then start doing some kind of exercise, and nothing crazy, but, something where you're gonna be moving about and sweating and getting your heart rate up and things like that. So,
That was an empowering look at how true detoxification isn't about deprivation, it's about restoration. So you really showed
exactly.
us
I
like
like
how.
that. That sounds
Mhm.
really
I
good.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Deprivation is not about restoration. I'm
No.
sorry, deprivation is about restoration. So you really showed us how clearing the body of toxins can unlock new energy, mental clarity, and physical balance. So be sure to follow the show so you'll never miss an episode. And until then, here's to your health without limits. Thank you,
Yeah,
Dr.
well,
C.
have a great day.